Hello, dear ones. May the Lord be with you all. So, this is an aside message that will lead to another obedience episode. Let's go into it. An emotional crisis happened one day. It hit me hard as a dewdrop on top of all when I got a reading from St. Therese's book on loving your neighbor. For days since I arrived in Portugal, I got in the Lord's Supper the reading about loving a neighbor. And I was thinking, is there something that I'm not doing, Lord? And it hit hard. At times having the temptation of throwing the book away in fits of anger, or hitting the wall in frustration with my fists, banging my head on the ground, or walking away from the Lord's presence and just give up on loving neighbors, because so far I noticed I felt no love for them. In fact, whenever I would receive a word of loving your neighbor, instant chill of coldness and inner rejection and even indifference was felt instead, and I thus realized my abyss of misery within myself, and I lost myself in sorrow and grief of unbalanced emotions swayed by this. And from 10 a.m. until midday, the battle went on. I could not start the Lord's Supper like that at all. And so I was desperately asking for help and for the prayers of Padre Pio and Mother Mary to help me start the Lord's Supper or to help me in the situation, because I could not. I was so angry with myself and this word of loving your neighbor. The anger temptations of my own weakness and failure, the anger temptation to hit something, to throw something, they ended up in tears as I poured out before the Lord all the anger, the frustrations, retaliations myself that I felt, the sorrows, the deep anguish of my own weakness, and everything I felt about loving neighbors, and the miserable side of me that felt like I didn't love them. I even shared with him how I saw our walk to be if I continued like this, as long as I live. I was crying. I just let it all out before him. Calming down after pouring it all out, we began the supper. You can see a precious outcome of the saint's intercession and of Mother Mary, whom I asked for help a few moments ago. That angry outcome could have been very harmful for me and the Lord, but it turned around to pouring it all of it, out. He protected by giving tears instead, and not fits of anger or retaliation banging my head on the ground. He unburdened my soul instead. Actually, that morning I noticed the verse of the day in the Bible app said, "Leave all your worries with him, for he cares for you." 1 Peter 5, verse 7. And so he made it for me later in that day, and he gave me peace of soul in exchange. What set the winds of the emotions to rage was when he denied me the desire I had to advance a drawing. I was feeling dry and empty of prayer, so I wanted to do something to fill myself up, if I may put it so. But he denied it. He wanted me to be with him, and in my pride and self-will, I did not took it so good. And it got bad when the last drop fell of Love Your Neighbor, reading from St. Therese's book. I was not feeling up to loving anything at that point. I was off. During the day, I got some rhemas, which altogether said, when you cannot live to the ideal you have set for yourself, which is to be able to love and to not give off such attitudes, live up to one thing I ask of you before all else. Trust in my merciful love. In this way you will always be pleasing to me, in moments of weakness as much as in times of regularity and generous fidelity to the rule. And this one was one of those moments of weakness and not so good on generous fidelity. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. And this is dying to self, to evil emotions, to strong depressive selves, to being humble, When you die in your sufferings, but you submit to those sufferings and you turn to Jesus, you bear fruit. Love only what God loves. And I was like, what does God love? I questioned. And I heard, He loves the truth. He loves righteousness. He loves you. And I heard this reply in my mind, and I could not accept myself being loved at that moment either. And the last Rhema said, the devil is strong with people who fear him, but weak with those who despise him. And this Rhema made me wonder. So before I crashed down, he already saw it, that it would happen that day, and he went ahead and gave me a word in the morning beforehand, before it all happened. So afterward, during the stormy rage, he listened to me throughout the pouring out and at every wandering step, at each tear. Even a day ago, one of the Raymonds was, though you fall, I can make you new. My grace is rich for you. And it had on that card a rope of grace extended to a hand, which was about to grab it. And today it came to pass, so there's hope. A while ago I also saw a picture of a meek pope crying, with a quote in it saying, paraphrased, "It is better to shed tears than to yield to anger, for tears are the healing of the soul, while anger destroys it in words." And it's so true. I had told the Lord previously as well that all of this welling up inside of me, all of these emotions and negativities, they will explode one day, Lord, I said. And it's just a matter of fact if it's gonna explode in tears or explosions of anger, throwing things or hitting things. And well, this time He gave me the healing of the soul. Tears. Thanks be to God. And I found out later on what this love your neighbor word was about. And it refers themselves to my family, as my superior mentioned it. It was not at all how I thought it was about, so I was just fussing about in my mind. Again, the battle is in the mind. The reading of Love Your Neighbor was that I was not spending enough time helping them, or being there for them, but being mostly up here in my ceiling room, tending to my things and ministry tasks. And the Lord kept getting rhemas of loving your neighbors, and I could feel a nudge that it might have been about neglecting time with them in favor of my own duties. But I thought that was just a slightly little something, and I brushed it off. But it turned out it was that He wanted me to take care of. So my superior suggested that I get a schedule based on the location I am in and the needs the family is in need of, to serve them, to be there for them. And after that, I also confessed in another struggle that I had noticed that I was still facing. My confessor tells me, well, you know what your penance is gonna be this week, then. She chuckled, but was serious about it. Oh no, I said. Oh no, I repeated. Yeah, she affirmed gently, saying more afterward, but my mind and ears were already turning off. They were wandering in another direction and possible events. One more challenge of obedience. I was still feeling fearful and seemingly hiding my priesthood, feeling tense if possibly found out by the rest of the family. So for the next week, my challenge was to tell the rest of the family members that I am a priest.